Please provide 3 examples of cost control measures you would put in place to limit property tax increases in Essex. Please provide 3 examples of cost control measures you would put in place to limit property tax increases in Essex.
Second thing to know is your hearing. Jack knows that. Well, I will talk a little bit about what I would do, and I want to talk a little bit about what we have already done. Over the last 8 years, we have worked really, really hard to take a budget that had in each individual account that each department presented to us slack that allowed them the flexibility to spend money on an emergency basis when they needed to do that. One of the first things we did was we aggregated all of that slack and put it into a Board of Finance emergency fund, which sort of got called a slush fund in the budget hearings, and it wasn't. Each municipal department's budget has no slack in it. They get appropriated exactly what they spend. And now we put an extra level of control in their requests for going over that budget and ask them now to go to the Board of Finance if they exceed those basic requirements for funding. That's what happens in Public Works, and why at the end of the year, why we budget, for example, a very tight amount based on an average snowfall, and if we have a record snowfall, we will have to go back for money, but the Board of Finance has a contingency fund, which, if not used, gets returned back into our undesignated fund. Things that I have in my mind that need to be addressed are a full review. I mean, I bring a management experience, and actually so does Bruce. Working in a business environment, I think that we need to review the entire structure of how our municipal services are delivered. I think we need to make sure that people are given the best tools and are able to work in the most efficient way possible. I'm not sure that most people in the town understand how few people actually work for this town, but we have between employees and elected official employees like the town clerk and the town treasurer, just around 30 people, and they provide all the services for the town, everything from Public Works to police, to all the services you expect in town hall, to all of our almost non-existent social services. We have a very, very small amount of people that provide those services, and we need to continue to work with them to be more efficient and better use their time and give them the tools necessary to be efficient. So that would be one of the goals that I would want to achieve.
Thank you, John. Next question is directed to you first. Do you think Essex needs and should therefore hire a town manager?
No. That had to be a loaded question. I think the first selectman needs to be the town manager in chief, or first select person. However, that said, I think that what we have to have in this town, and it has been a goal over the last 8 years that Phil and I have worked hard to achieve, is that there has to be a rung of competent professional people working in this town hall that can manage many of the day-to-day functions without fear that if a new first selectman came in who would provide vision and direction, did not have the skill set necessary to do that job, they would need to be able, the town would need to seamlessly continue to operate in an efficient way. The best example I could give you is the sort of turmoil that Chester has been thrown into because their first selectman, who is an excellent first selectman and did a great job, decided for personal reasons to take a position as town manager up in Vermont. As we have had here, our first selectman that took a picture. I think everybody likes to go to Vermont to be town manager. I go to Florida. But I think that competent professional people within this town government are essential. The requirements from a regulatory and operational point of view are very, very different than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. And one of the doors I knocked on was Betty Gadenzi's, and some folks who've lived in the town for a long time know Betty. She was a long time town clerk and town treasurer, and I told Stacia that this was Betty and this was what her job. Betty looked at me and said, there is no way that in this environment anybody could do that job, could do both of those jobs at the same time anymore. So I believe that the first selectman model works very well for our town. I believe it provides a great deal of accountability to the citizens of our town. But I believe that the employees of the town government need to be strong and competent so that if somebody picks up and leaves or gets unelected in the next election, we have continuity. That's really important today. Even just the accounting requirements are so much more comprehensive than we ever have to face.
Like Norm, I would not also hire a town manager. In fact, I thought that's what I was interviewing for. That's why all of you are here. This is a very elaborate interview process. What I would be is the town manager, the CEO of the town. And what I'd like to bring to it is kind of standard business practices. You know, why not have a little pay for performance for the non-union employees? Why not set goals and standards for the 26 or 30 employees that we have? And why not do a little evaluation of them? Why not also talk to them a little bit about customer service? Because that's really the business we're in. We're here to serve you. And everybody should understand that works for the town. So those common business practices is what I would bring. And I've done this both in a large company setting, when I ran businesses all around the world where I didn't even speak the language, but used my leadership to instill on them those kind of things, and also in a small business setting. Because we're in the service business, and if I'm first selected, we are really going to serve you.
Bruce, you get the,
I'm sorry.
yeah, next question.
I didn't see Mark leaning against the wall, so I thought it was his turn.
Question is, how do you think Essex will be affected, and what do you feel we should do to prepare for, affected by, I should say, and what do you feel we should do to prepare for the pending changes in the education cost-sharing funding from the state?
Well, I think we should be absolutely prepared for, in the coming years, to not get any money in the school cost sharing. It's not a big percentage of our budget right now, but I think what's going on in the state, I think that's one that'll be reduced, and I think we ought to now plan for that when we go through our budget process. And if we are fortunate enough and they continue it and we get some money, well then we have some money that we can move into our unrestricted fund or do something else with it. But I think we ought to be prepared for that, and I think we ought to budget for it. You know, one of the things that you don't like in business, and I know you don't like as citizens, is surprises. And you know, we've had some surprises in our budget process. And you know, we've had several town meetings where we've had to approve a known expense that somehow didn't get into the budget and take it out of our contingency fund. And yes, that's what the contingency fund is there for. But I think we ought to prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Thank you. Any question? Thank you.
It's one area where I agree with Bruce. I think that we have the great benefit and the great tragedy, I guess, of being a relatively affluent community and not getting a lot of money from the state. So through this whole budget crisis that the state has gone through, I believe that we can't lose that much because we don't get that much, and we don't depend on that much. That said, over the last 8 years, we have increased our undesignated fund, which is really another way of calling a rainy day fund, from $500,000 to about $2.6 million. Huge part of that is as a result of solid budgeting, a great town treasurer, and a great board of finance that has been very prudent. But over the years, there has been a slight amount extra built into the mill rate in order to achieve that level of security. Every year we budget conservatively on the revenue and the expense side. So we are in a position now where we have a undesignated fund or a rainy day fund that's around 13% of our budget, which is incredibly solid and sound from a bond rating point of view, but also from a prudence point of view. I don't know, and I'm not going to be one to predict where things are going to go with the state of Connecticut over the next several years. I would imagine that the trend will be in the direction of us getting slightly less, although I think there are state mandated obligations that they will have to meet, so I doubt that it will go down to zero. And I think that we need to budget, and each year as the situation evolves, we need to budget prudently based on that. I'm not going to tell you that the sky is falling when I don't believe it is. It could any time, but it's not now. And through the last several years of managing the town, we have been very prudent. And because of our prudence, we've ended up in a very, very healthy situation as a municipality. And I'm very, very proud of that record over the last 8 years. We have done great. It's been a cooperative effort. I think that the people on the Board of Finance and our town treasurer work together with the Board of Selectmen in a way that party affiliation has never really, really mattered. We all want the same thing. We all want to have a solid town financially. We want to be prepared. And yes, there have been over the last 8 years a handful of times when we have gone back for unanticipated expenses, but as a percentage of the overall budget in that last 8 years, I guarantee you it's been less than 1%.
You're up, man. Sorry.
You guys have to forgive me, I got a really bad back. I should have told you that like Bruce did.
Okay, the question is, recent pay raises for Essex Town employees have been justified as offsets for their increased health insurance costs. Would you continue the practice of offsetting increased health insurance costs with pay raises for municipal workers?
I want to address that with a couple of comments. One, that has not been the rationale for increased pay increases. The increased pay increases have really been cost of living. We have tried to offset our increasing healthcare burden by asking for a higher participation rate from both our union and non-union employees. I personally believe that municipal workers, state workers, union, non-union, need to be moved into a very comparable situation that the private sector is. In my company, we cover, I think, 75% of the cost of healthcare. And I think over a number of years, without being onerous to our employees, irrespective of pay increases, they need to be moved in the direction of the private sector. And in the last union contracts that I've been party to, we've moved in that direction. So I feel very strongly that they're not linked. We have tried to be fair in evaluating people's pay within this municipal government, and we don't actually think that anybody is overpaid for the work that they do. We pay on the low end of the spectrum for teachers or municipal workers or elected municipal workers in this town government, and generally speaking, I think we get a bargain for what we get. That doesn't mean to say that there isn't room for improvement, and I would seek that. And to answer one thing that Bruce said, I believe very strongly in rewarding performance. When I was elected onto the Board of Selectmen, it was sort of an anathema to me to have things like longevity pay in our budget. I didn't quite get it. I didn't quite understand the concept of steps. I understand and accept that they're a natural part of doing business. I would try, if possible, and it's not an easy thing to do, but if possible, I would try to move us on that piece of our spending and on that piece of the remuneration that our employees and elected officials get to move to a more merit-based system. I don't believe, and I don't pay within my own business, people for just showing up. And I think that it's generally not a good business practice. It doesn't foster the most efficient workforce. So I don't know how we get there. I think I have some ideas on how you would begin the process of that negotiation. And in the last police contract that I helped negotiate, I think we made moves in that direction. But I think we have, it will be a process to move into that. Because we got here, we were here before Phil and I were elected, and I think it's going to take a while to undo that. I would never suggest a unilateral action. I don't think that that's fair.
Sure. Recent pay raises for Essex Town employees have been justified as offsets to their increased health insurance costs. Will you continue the practice of offsetting increased health care costs with pay raises for municipal workers?
Let me just first talk a little bit about the fringe benefit costs for the 26 or 30 employees that we have. From 2003 to 2010, they increased 56%, going from about 350,000 to about 850,000. So it's a lot of money. As I said, I want to bring common business practices to the running of the town. I want to pay for performance, okay? I want to incentivize the people. And as we heard, I believe Norm feels the same way. In regard to fringe benefits, we have to get in tune with what's happening in the marketplace. We've got to have better plan design. We've got to look at the plan design of our employees' health benefits. We've got to look at how we're funding that so that it has more participation. Norm alluded to his negotiations with the police budget, the police union. To be honest with you, I was quite surprised when they're paying 14%, then the next year we negotiated that to 15%, then to 16%. I thought that was rather modest. I think that we need to get more contributions, and we can do that in several ways. One is by having a different plan design, which makes the plan more effective. And again, I'm a big believer in pay for performance.
Thank you. Next question is directed to you first, Bruce. That's okay. Former selectmen have voiced their opposition to the development of the preserve property. What is your position regarding the future development of that land?
That's a very difficult situation. I'm supportive of protecting that piece of land that is very pristine. At the same time, I think that we don't want to totally tie the development of that for the people in Old Saybrook. But with that being said, we don't want their traffic either. So I would support the current position that we're using with the preserve. And that is that kind of keep it out of our backyard if we can.
Okay.
Well, I think the first thing I'd like to say is that Bill Miller deserves to be really commended for the very, very activist role that he's taken and stood up in our community with other communities in stopping that project from happening. I cannot honestly tell you that I would have had the courage and the strength of conviction that he had in doing that, and the slack that he took, the flack that he took because of the fact that we spend some money on legal fees, which our illustrious town treasurer doesn't think we should spend any money on. I really think that at the end of the day, the preserve poses a threat to our community, to our town, and to our community. That we have nothing to gain and everything to lose by the development of that property. The movement of gravel and rock out of that property to make any of it usable will come right up Bochum Road and head north on 153 and go on to Route 9. And at one point, I calculated that it was somewhere around 50,000 truckloads of material had to be removed to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. I stand here before you firmly opposed to the development of that property. I think that the state has been more than generous, late to the table, as have the towns. And I tell you this, knowing that the towns could have done a better job years ago in acquiring that property. But I believe that the state and the towns together have come to the table with a very fair offer, and the developer should really consider abandoning its desires to develop that property, which serves as the headwaters for three major aquifer rivers in our towns, Essex, Westbrook, and Saybrook. So I would work hard to oppose it. I would participate in the opposition of it, and I don't want to see that property developed.
Almost an hour and 10 minutes in, so this will be the last question before closing statements. Where do you think Essex can be in 4 years, meaning 2 terms, under your leadership?
Right here. I think that I would like to see a few things happen in this town. I would really like to see us continue to improve our infrastructure. I think that we have some big projects ahead of us that we need to tackle. I think that we've sacrificed our town hall. I think a lot of it needs to be renovated. There was work to be done here, and if we don't do it now, it's going to cost more in the future. I think that the town will continue to evolve and have a vibrant business community. It will always be changing. There will always be some properties empty and some properties full, but I think that we will continue to have a community that is attractive to people from all over this country and in many cases all over the world. It will be my job as first selectman to make sure that that stays that way. People ask, what are your goals? My goals are to really work on the things that we need to work on and keep the town beautiful and keep it wonderful. Back, because I have a couple of seconds, to an economic goal, I think that if the first selectman would exert some influence and maybe put some initiative behind the idea of instilling in the residents of this town that even though we have 3 villages, we are one town. We are one community. And we need to come to recognize that in order for the quality of life throughout the town to improve. When we have an Ivoryton mentality and a Centerbrook mentality and a village mentality, it really doesn't serve the town well, because the town is one town. It's 6,700 people. People say, why can't we do what Chester has done? Well, we can't do what Chester has done. One, because we don't have sewers in town, and I will never advocate for that. But 2, because we have 3 village centers. We need to connect them. There was an application made for a bus that would move people between those centers. We have 3 major tourist attractions in town that are spread through this town. The Playhouse, notice I put that first. The Playhouse, the River Museum, and the Railroad. People that go to one don't necessarily go to the other 2. We need to find a way to advocate for that. So I would like to see us, if I could achieve anything, I would like to see us slightly change that mentality from this very Ivoryton, Centerbrook, and Essex-centric thinking to one of recognizing that we're one town. And we sink and swim together in this town. So I would advocate for that. Thank you.
To repeat the question, Bruce, where do you think Essex can be in 4 years, in other words, 2 terms, under your leadership?
Well, I think Essex, under my leadership, can be a safe, comfortable, affordable, highly participatory town, and keeping our focus on the excellence in education. Now, I think we can do this in a number of ways. I think we need to grow our tax base. As I said earlier, I want to recruit businesses to town. You know, I think we can solve some of the problems. You know, we need restaurants, maybe a nice restaurant in Iverton. And not that we don't have 2 there now, but another. I want it. And I think we could use another restaurant or 2 in Essex Village, and maybe even another one there. But I think we can look at, and sewers are a problem for restaurants, but I think we can look at that on an individual area basis and come up with some solutions for that. Also, in 4 years, I hope you'll see that the whole focus of the town will change, that will be more customer service. And I totally agree with Norm that we seem to have an attitude that it's 3 separate towns when it's one. And I want to work very hard to overcome that. Thanks.
We'll now move on to the closing statements, and the candidates for second selectman will go first, and Joel Marcy is the